Hello and welcome. Welcome to tonight's webinar. So, as Gael said, indeed, we're going to talk about how to negotiate your best ever salary. And we're going to talk about both how to negotiate a salary if you're applying for a new position, but also how you can possibly get a salary increase in your current role. So for those of you who don't know me, although I've done a couple of workshops recently with Focus, I am an interview and career coach with 14 years of coaching experience and around 15 years of recruitment experience. During this time, I have mostly recruited for technology and e-commerce companies, different sizes, huge companies like Microsoft or Expedia, startups like Yieldify, which was the first investment of Google Ventures in Europe, as well as Box, the Candy Box or King, which was the Candy Crush maker. I am also a qualified personal performance and corporate and executive coach. I am a career blogger, and I've also written an ebook and created an online course, which I will actually mention to you later because it might be useful to some of you. So that's about me, and this is what we will cover today. So firstly, why do you need to negotiate? How the salary negotiation game is played in different organizations. Why do the recruiters ask for the desired salary early on? I will talk to you about how to answer the question about your salary expectations. And whenever I do any workshops, that's one question that people really want to know, how do I really answer these questions? Because you don't want to sell yourself short, but you don't want to price yourself out of the job either. And then we'll talk about how to negotiate salary when changing jobs and how to negotiate a raise in your current position. So there's quite a lot of content to get through. I actually have some notes in front of me that I might have to look at every now and then just to ensure I don't forget anything. So in terms of content, we're probably going to have about half an hour today, and then we're going to open up for questions. Yes? So any questions you have, just raise your hand. And so Gail, you will see questions, yes? Yes. So absolutely feel free to ask me questions as we progress through the content. So firstly, why you need to negotiate? If you want to get paid what you are truly worth, you must become a master at the art of salary negotiation. So you must learn not only how the salary game is played, but you also must understand the correct mental approach to take in when you negotiate your salary. And in terms of why you need to negotiate, in my experience, and it might be your experience as well, once you start the job, once you get inside the company, it's very difficult to negotiate a substantial salary increase. In a lot of companies I have worked for, the annual increases were only in the region of 1% to 3%. And even if the person was being promoted, that increase wouldn't be more than 10%. So it's really important that you negotiate as high a salary as possible before you start your new job. And of course, it's grateful, for having a job, but at the same time, you should not settle for less than what your results, experience, and skills are being paid for in the marketplace. So I would say you should almost always negotiate. The only times when I said you probably shouldn't negotiate is, firstly, if you have been paid exactly what you have asked for. It's actually quite annoying when you know what the candidate is looking for. You got an approval as a recruiter, as an internal recruiter for that sort of offer, and then the candidate tells you they're looking for more, and you might not be able to offer more. So that's kind of a waste of time. If you are being offered exactly what you've asked for, then I probably wouldn't negotiate. And another example when I probably wouldn't negotiate is when you knew exactly what the salary was from the start. So I will talk to you about in a moment about how it works in different organizations. But in general, I've seen in some public sector organizations or, councils and government, there is typically a very strict salary banding, and you typically, can't negotiate that much. You know exactly what the salary is going to be when you apply. Also, as a recruiter, when I speak to the candidate, when I ask them about salary expectations, and let's say they'll tell me they're looking for 70,000, and our maximum salary is, say, 68, just hypothetically, I will tell them at the start, because I don't want to have any unpleasant surprises later. So if you know what the salary was at the start, and if you then still decide to take part in the interview process, I probably wouldn't try to negotiate, because it's just annoying everyone, and it's kind of a waste of time for everyone. But in most cases, you should absolutely ask for more. And honestly, in most cases, the company is always able to offer a little bit more. I've seen it hundreds of times with many times when we've been negotiating salaries. So, how the salary negotiation game is played. So perhaps the most confusing aspect is that the rules of the game really vary from company to company. So some employers refuse to negotiate at all. They offer one salary, and if you don't accept it, they simply move on to the next person. So depending on what kind of position you are in, and how sought after your skills are, employers of course can operate quite nicely under this policy if they have enough qualified candidates, and also if it's like an employer's market. Maybe in the current situation, I guess employers will have the upper hand when offering salaries. Then other employers use a pay grade system. That has been my experience. Most of the companies I've recruited for, they will have a pay grade, and they evaluate each job, and then assign it a pay grade level, so as secretary 1 or data analyst 2. And then they will have a salary range for each grade in every country that they operate in. So they might negotiate salaries to an extent, but it's typically just within the confines of that salary range. And typically the first offer, so that salary range, it could be actually quite a big range, it could be even 20,000 difference, or even more, at the higher level. So typically the first offer made to a candidate falls below the midpoint. So you have the minimum salary, you've got the midpoint salary, you've got the maximum salary, and typically the first salary will fall way below midpoint, or maybe midpoint, depending on the candidate's current salary. So I actually always find it quite annoying, but the reason companies do that is that they don't like to hire people in the upper end of the range, because they can't give annual raises without moving beyond those specific salary guidelines for the positions. Then there are other employers who have some sort of loose guidelines for a position, but they aren't opposed to paying above or below when it's needed. And if they want you really badly, they will be able to negotiate negotiate salary for you. So it's really different in different organizations. In my experience, the smaller companies might be a little bit more flexible. In the large organizations, you can negotiate salary, but you probably won't be able to negotiate a number of holidays, and you can do that in smaller organizations. So the perks could be easier to negotiate in a smaller company as well. And the person handling the negotiation varies from company to company as well. So in companies with HR department, you will typically be dealing with either an HR person or a recruiter who will act as a liaison between a candidate and the hiring manager. Sometimes you will deal directly with the hiring manager. Again, that's probably more likely in smaller companies. So each situation has its pros and cons. So HR person or a recruiter are usually more skilled at negotiation, which means that they probably won't give you as many clues as what they're really thinking as the hiring manager. On the other hand, there are definitely benefits to dealing with HR as opposed to the hiring manager. If negotiations get sticky when you're bargaining with the hiring manager, it could damage the working relationship once you're on the job, after you're on the job. So how do you actually negotiate with HR versus when dealing with a recruitment company? So if you are working with a recruitment agency or a search firm recruiter, allow them to broker the terms on your behalf. So typically they will be briefed on what the salary range is. You will be within that salary range, otherwise you wouldn't have been interviewed. And then you can just focus on outlining how you are the best fit for the position. But if you are dealing with the company directly, when do you bring up the money questions to ensure that you're not wasting your time? So if the company is qualifying candidates correctly, they really should be asking about your salary requirements or your current salary right in the first interview. Otherwise, it's a complete waste of time. I remember once losing an hour and a half. There were actually 2 45-minute interviews. I've been approached for a position that sounded interesting. And I spoke to a senior director, and I didn't want to ask about the salary in the first call. I just didn't want to, didn't want him to think that I was just interested in money, because that wasn't the case. But I was very surprised he didn't ask me about my salary expectations. So we had a 45-minute call. He explained the role. I talked about my experience, answered his questions. He wants to arrange another call. Again, we go on for 45 minutes. And then he asks me, only then, right? An hour and a half later, he asked me about my salary expectations. And basically their maximum salary was what I was already on. And, the job really wasn't that different for me to take a job at exactly the same level, at exactly the same salary. It wasn't even a 10% increase. So if the company is not qualifying you with a salary requirement, then one of two things is happening. One is that they are truly flexible with regards to the compensation within the market standards for the position, and possibly they might even pay above the market rates for the role. If that's the case, you want to demonstrate not only that you are qualified, but that you are worthy of the higher end of the compensation package. But unfortunately, most of the time, if you are not asked about your salary requirements, it's because employer is quite unsophisticated in its recruitment practices. So they might not realize that asking for salary requirements early on ensures that neither the candidate or the company wastes time. Or maybe they do it on purpose to see if the candidate will love the job so much that they will then accept a lowball offer. So I personally, if you are invited to an interview, maybe you have a telephone interview first. If they don't bring up a salary, if they don't ask about your salary information, but they are inviting you to a face-to-face interview, I would actually ask either the recruiter or whoever you are dealing with. And you don't need to ask what's your salary range. I mean, you may, but you can just say, thank you so much for inviting me for an interview. We haven't actually discussed salary, but just to let you know, I'm looking for, and you kind of mentioned the range. How does it fit within your salary range? Because I've heard so many examples from friends actually who went for interviews. The employer didn't ask them about salary, and then the salary was like 15,000 less than what they were on. I mean, it's a complete waste of time for everyone. So yeah, if they're not asking you, I would definitely ask them. And importance of your starting salary. So regardless of what salary policies the employer follows or who is involved in the negotiation process, it's kind of one thing that applies to all of these situations. After you take the job, honestly, it's most likely going to be quite difficult to negotiate a salary substantially, because employers base annual raises on your starting wage. So in many of these organizations I mentioned that earlier, the annual increase is only like 1%, 2%, 3%, maybe 5%. And some organizations won't offer you more, even if you are getting a promotion. In some companies I've worked for, you would get, maximum 10% increase, even when you were getting promoted, which honestly was sometimes so unfair, because what if you started, what if you've been with the company for 5 years? Probably anyone else currently being hired would receive a higher salary. But if you started at a lower salary, then you progressed, you wouldn't have received those incremental salary increases. So that's why it's really critical to negotiate the best deal before you accept a new job, because your success or failure really affects you for a long time to come. So how high can you go? And I will give you some examples in a moment, but your negotiating power depends on a number of factors. So the first is your negotiating skills, your ability to persuade the employer to give you what you want. The second is obviously the job market. If there are a lot of people with your skills and experience selling similar skills, it's going to be harder to negotiate. You lose some of that negotiating edge. And especially right now, there are a lot of people looking for work, which means that in most fields, it's the buyer's market. And maybe employers aren't as likely to negotiate salaries because they know there will be a lot of other people with similar qualifications. However, and that's actually also very important to remember, keep in mind that employer selected you as the best person for the job. So you obviously must have something that other candidates didn't have. And don't assume that a tight economy means that you can't negotiate a better deal, because in most cases you can. And in any case, it's worth trying, because even if they tell you no, at least you've tried, right? And you're not thinking, what if? So if you ask for additional compensation in the right way, and your request is reasonable considering the market value of the position, you won't risk losing the job. You can always bring your asking price down if the employer says no, and the employer might just surprise you and agree to your request. And the third factor affecting your negotiating power is the type of job you're being hired to do. Generally, the higher up the corporate ladder, the more you can negotiate for wages and benefits and perks. So why recruiters ask for a desired salary early on? So if you are dealing with the recruiter, you probably realize that the recruiters get them to business fast, and they typically ask you, during the first call, like, what's your desired salary? What salary are you looking for? And it might have even rubbed you in the wrong way. So the reason recruiters need to ask is a few reasons. Firstly, sometimes candidates have completely unrealistic expectations. And seriously, some people are not on the same planet. Like, you would see someone with not that much experience thinking for some reason that they're entitled to a salary that someone, with 10 years of experience, with 10 years more of experience would be looking for. So if that's the case, there's no point bothering with candidates who have completely unrealistic expectations. A recruiter's client, if you deal with an agency recruiter, of course, they might be willing to negotiate, but only within reason. And you also have to consider it from the recruiter's perspective if you are dealing with an agency recruiter. If they don't ask you about the salary and then they pass on your CV to a client, to the company, and then it turns out that your expectations are completely unrealistic, it's just a waste of time for the employer and for you and for the recruiter. So that's why, and recruiters are being paid only if the candidate gets hired. So so they obviously can't take that risk. Of course, if you're an experienced candidate, you should be paid at least the market rate. And if for whatever reason the salary is below the market rate, then of course this is something that you need to explore during the interview. So how do you answer the salary question? Okay. So firstly, it's really important that you do some research to understand the going rate for the position. So there are many ways you can do that. You can look at the Glassdoor. I wouldn't say it's always accurate, but it will give you some idea. There is a website called PayScale. I think it's mostly for the US, but again, it can, maybe not, but again, it will give you an idea of what these types of jobs are paying. You can also look at salary surveys. So many recruitment agencies, they produce a salary survey every year, and they will have, as an example, you might just type into Google finance salary survey London or stuff like that, or marketing salary surveys London. I'm not saying you will always find it, but I've seen a lot of recruitment agencies publishing just a really long salary survey. It's a whole PDF document with different jobs at different levels and different salaries. That will give you an idea. If you are dealing with a recruitment agency, again, ask them, what's the salary range for the position. Then if you are asked for your previous compensation, it is what it is, right? I would just be honest and tell them your total compensation number, so your base salary, your bonus, the value of your benefits. If you are in a position that you are perhaps being quite underpaid and you are being underpaid, then maybe just try to give them the overall compensation, without breaking down the salary, the base salary and the bonus. But in general, it is what it is. You don't need to apologize for that. And sometimes people will maybe increase the salary. They will mention they were earning a couple of thousand more, but in general, they can check that if they really want to. I've seen situations, especially for salespeople, who maybe 40 or 50% of the compensation would be in commissions. And it's not uncommon for the employer to ask to see the pay slips, because we're talking about big money, right? So if you have a salesperson who's on, say, 120,000 base, and they say they're making another 150,000 in commissions, you kind of want to make sure that's true, before you make them an offer. So in general, I would advise that once you understand what the salary range is for a position, I would advise that you give them a range. So maybe I'll break it down for you in a moment, but you can say something like, I am interviewing for roles in the low 70s to high 70s salary range, and I am flexible based on the nature of the responsibilities for the position. Or you can say something like, I am ideally looking for, say, 60 to 65,000, but I'm really, I'm much more interested in finding the right company or the right fit. So you never want to come across as salary is your main motivator, even if it is, it should never be your number one motivator. But I think I would say I am ideally looking for, and mention the range. I wouldn't mention one specific number, because honestly, that's all they're going to give you, if not less. So let's say you mentioned you're looking for, say, 70 as an example. That's the maximum they're going to give you, if not less. So it's always better to ask for a little bit more, and I'll talk about that later as well. So let's just break it down. So when you are mentioning I am interviewing for, this phrase is better than I am looking for or I want, because frankly, I don't think they really care that much what you want. It's like what the prospective employer wants to know is, are your expectations realistic and are you worth it? And also when you say I am interviewing for, that implies that other companies are interviewing you for roles at a similar level. And then when you mention that salary range, in the low 70s to high 70s, outlining that range that's a little bit fuzzy maybe, it gives some, like maybe sends a message of flexibility in your candidacy. What's this? Wow, just noticed this red, no idea what that was. So it basically shows that you are being flexible. So if you were to give your range as say 73 to 77,000, and the company wants to offer you 72, you have just put them in a position of thinking that you probably will be disappointed with their offer. And no company wants to make an offer that's gonna be disappointing to a new hire. And so, if, for example, if you had set low 70s, an offer at 72 is well within that range. On the flip side, if they wanted to offer you 79, by saying high 70s, they might offer you 79. Whereas if you say 73 to 77, trust me, you will never get more than the 77, and then you lose on the potential 2,000 that you could get. So that's why it's important. And also the last bit, I am flexible based on the nature of the responsibilities for the position. That will enable you to backpedal if you then find out somehow gracefully, if you find out that maybe there are more responsibilities than you thought. So if you learn there is more responsibility than what you initially thought, that you can indicate that your initial salary requirement was for a role for a less responsible role. Or maybe if the role is not as demanding as you thought, or maybe has less travel than you thought, then you can indicate that you would accept a lower range. So again, you don't need to do it that exact way. That's one, I would definitely mention a range. That's one thing I would just want to emphasize. Mention a range, or mention I am ideally looking for, or I am interviewing for roles. Mention the range, and then you can mention that you're flexible, or simply that the right role and the right company is your main concern. Any questions on that? No? Okay. So one common misconception.
Maybe I do have a question. Can I? Yeah. So the range, you can of course have a range of 5,000 or a range of 10,000.
Of course,
or could you have a range of 20,000? Or what would be your advice?
You know what? I'm not sure we give a range of 20,000, because that's like, I think that's kind of unlikely. Like you wouldn't really be getting. I think it's highly unlikely that you'll be getting either the minimum. I think I'll keep it to like a 10,000 at the most. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'll range to 5 or 10,000. I mean, listen, I think it depends on what level you are. I mean, let's say you're like a top exec let's say you're on 170,000. Yeah, as an example, that I know that most people aren't on that salary. I'm not either, but let's say you're on that salary, and let's say you just really don't enjoy your job, and you'll be happy. I mean, I've seen people at that level who are happy to take a 20K pay cut, because they just want to have a company that they really like. They want a role they will enjoy. So I think the higher, the more senior you are, I think that it's fine to mention a range that's about 20,000. But if it's like, if we're talking 50, 60, 70, 80,000, I don't think it's gonna, I wouldn't mention a range of 20,000. Okay.
Normal job, 10,000 range.
Yeah, I think, there's no one. I mean, do your research, right? I think I would just do the research, because that will show you. If you know what other people are earning at that level, that will show you. But I probably wouldn't mention 20,000 now. It doesn't have to be 10,000 exactly, but I don't think I would have it quite as broad.
Okay, clear. Thank you.
What level you are. Yeah, depends what level you are. Yep. So one thing to remember is that a lot of people think that negotiating the raises is based on experience and how long you've stayed there and demonstrations of loyalty, and of course it can help get a higher salary in a new role, or to negotiate a salary in your current position, but really the bottom line for determining your worth is, does the employee make more money for the company than they cost the company? So that's it. Like, jobs are kept if you as an employee contribute more to the profitability than you cost, and you will only be offered that higher salary if you can demonstrate that you can bring a higher return on investment to the company if they invest in you. So that's why it's so important that you can sell yourself. Obviously, if you're getting an offer, you've clearly sold yourself well, but that's why it's so important that you can demonstrate to the employer how you can really make an impact and how you make impact in other organizations. So the key takeaway is that you know to go into a negotiation, proving your worth to the company so they can see what they can gain by investing in you, and what they will lose if they lost you. So, and I will show you actually some examples. So how do you negotiate salary when changing jobs? So as I mentioned earlier, it's really important to negotiate your best deal when you accept your new job. Again, typically you won't be able to increase your salary that much. I'm sure there are exceptions, but that's just what I've seen in many companies I've recruited for. And I hear the same from my colleagues who are recruiters. So, really, really important that you can that you do that if you can. And also, you really must focus on the needs of the employer and not yours when you sell yourself in an interview and also in salary negotiation. So no one cares that you want to buy a car or pay your mortgage. Like if you want 5,000 more or 10,000 more or whatever, you have to prove that you are worth 5,000 more to the company. And also during those negotiations, you want to be really enthusiastic, you want to be polite and professional. It's not a competition. Like you want to show them that your goal is a win-win solution. So I have seen offers being withdrawn because the candidate was just too aggressive in negotiating. Like of course no one will withdraw an offer just because you're trying to negotiate. But if you have this like take it or leave it attitude, and if you just come across as someone who's just interested in the money, that's typically not going to work. And I have literally seen offers being withdrawn because the hiring manager just didn't like how aggressive the candidate was during the negotiation. So you also want to ask for a little more than what you think employer wants to offer, and then you can negotiate a middle ground. So as an example, just picking the number out of thin air. Let's say that you are on 50,000. You would accept 55, but ideally you would really want 60 or 65, right? As an example. Then you can maybe say something like, I'm interviewing, or I'm considering positions in the range of between 57 and 65, right? As an example. And then if they offer you the 57 or the 55, you might still be happy. Whereas if you say, oh, I'm looking for, I'll be happy with the same salary, or I'm looking for 53 to 55, then trust me, you will just get the minimum of what you have asked for. I actually find it, there were so many times that I have been, I've been pushing for a higher salary for the candidates, because the hiring manager typically, I'm not saying that they always want to lowball you, that's actually not the case. I wouldn't say that's the case, but at the same time, no one wants to pay more than what they have to. So yeah, always ask for a little bit more based on your research, because then you can at least, negotiate based on that. So, and also ask a fair price. So you want to ensure that your requests are reasonable and in line with the current marketplace. So let me give you an example. A few years ago, I was recruiting for a business analyst position when I was at Expedia. And I spoke honestly to quite a lot of candidates. I must have spoken to 10 or 15 people. And pretty much everyone, I'm not joking, everyone, so these 10 or 15 people, they were all earning between 40 and 55. That was kind of the range. That seemed to have been the range. The person with a few years of experience, maybe one was like 57. Actually, no one was earning over 55. So that was like, some of them were maybe 40, say between 40 and 55. And then this one guy, I speak to him, he had a pretty good CV, but actually he was still pretty junior. And he insisted that he was looking just minimum 65, and actually, frankly, it's very hard to know if he was really lying or not. But, when you speak to 15, 20 candidates in the market, and then suddenly one person is earning 15,000 more than anyone else, I'm not saying it can happen. Maybe he just negotiated a really good salary, but he just priced himself out of the job because he couldn't pay that level. That wasn't even a senior analyst. That was just an analyst. So, we just couldn't consider him because he insisted 65 was his minimum. And he wasn't senior. He was actually more junior than many of the other candidates who were earning 10,000 less. So you also want to be careful. You want to ask for more, but you don't want to ask for something that's actually not the market rate for the position. And also keep selling yourself, so you want to remind the employer how they will benefit from your skills and experience, just as you've done in an interview. So, look at this example here. Let's assume employer wants to offer you 70,000, but you want at least 77, right? Maybe you've told them that you were looking between 77 and 80 or whatever. So you want to explain how they would benefit by increasing your compensation. So you've got this example here. You can say something like, I realize you have a budget to worry about. However, I believe that with my desktop publishing and graphic design skills I bring to the position, you won't have to hire outside vendors to produce newsletters and other publications. These alone should produce more than 7,000 in savings a year. So that obviously will be tailored to your position, right? Because you will understand what the challenges are and what your role is. But basically you want to justify every pound, dollar or benefit that you request, and you want to focus on the employer's needs, not on your needs. Yeah, does it make sense? If you have a situation where the salary offer is below market value, again, you might want to gently suggest that it's in a company's best interest to pay the going rate. So as you can see on the screen, actually need to make this smaller. So as you can see, the research that I've done indicates the going rate for a position such as this is 6,000 higher than this offer. I would really love to work for you, and I believe I can add a lot of value in this job. However, I can't justify doing so for less than market value. I think if you re-evaluate the position and consider its importance to your bottom line, you will find it's worth paying market price to get someone who can really make an impact quickly. Yes, so that's always worth asking for a little bit more. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm just. So very quickly, before I talk about how to negotiate a salary in your current job, I actually wanted to take literally just a couple of minutes to tell you about something that might be of interest to you, and it's also relevant to the topic we are discussing today. So I have this online course at a very special offer right now. It's almost for free. It's called Get the Job You Want. So if you go to interview-coach.co.uk, as you can see at the bottom, on top of the screen, you have the link to online course. Which is get the job you want. So you will see that, you click on that, you will see that course. And basically what it covers is how do you get more interviews and offers even in a competitive job market. So it has 5 training webinars on how to get more interviews, how recruiters read CVs and what they are looking for. We've got the whole LinkedIn stuff, how to optimize your LinkedIn profile so that recruiters come to you with some specific examples, how to interview and salary negotiation. And you get the slides, you get the transcripts of all the classes, and you get a lot of amazing handouts. So basically, normally this course is £97. Right now, during the COVID-19, I'm offering that for just £39, and also that includes a 30-minute free coaching session for those who attended the webinar. So when you go to the website, you will see I'm offering a 20-minute session, but that's going to be 30 minutes for anyone who attended this webinar. So, I mean, that's incredibly cheap. I mean, normally my coaching sessions are, 230 for an hour and a half. So, so this is just a very special offer during the coronavirus, and you get a lot of really amazing handouts. So you get an applicant tracking system optimized CV template, you get a CV and LinkedIn profile checklist and sample career networking scripts and list of job search activities. You have examples of interview answers. So a lot of people struggle with competency-based questions, and I'll give you some examples of questions and answers that to make it easier for you to structure your own answers. And also you get salary negotiation scripts, to ask for the pay you want, not just what you've been offered. So I have scripts in writing to negotiate when you have other offers, when you want to negotiate a relocation package, increased stock options, flexible work schedule, a better job title perhaps, and job relocation. So there's quite a lot, and that's just 39 instead of 97. So if that's of interest, just click on the link above, and we can arrange a free 30-minute coaching session, so I can look at your CV, help you with your interview technique, or look at your LinkedIn profile, or whatever else you need. So let's look at how do you negotiate salary in your current job. So actually, how many of you right now are not looking for a new job, but you are looking to potentially get an increase in your current position? Is there anyone? No one right now? That's okay. It's still understanding how to ask for a raise. It's a skill that everyone again needs to master. And when you ask for a raise, there are many things that you can do ahead of time to increase your odds of landing the increase that you want. So here are some tips. So first, you want to prove yourself before you ask for a raise. And many times, and I've seen that many times as well, when I was involved in internal transfers, is that many times employees ask for a raise when they haven't actually proven their value to the firm. So view your potential raise as an investment made by the organization, and that company is looking to see what will be the return on their investment made in you. So place yourself in visible positions and promote yourself to ensure that the decision makers understand your value. One, also volunteer for projects that are important. So one way to gain visibility is to offer your talents and time and abilities to challenging projects that are viable to the firm's success. So that way you will be working alongside key players with the company who can then vouch for your work ethics and commitment to bring results. And it's so important when you ask for a raise that people within the company actually know you, because a lot of people, the mistake they make, and actually I think women make that mistake more than men, but it's not exclusively women, is that they just work really hard, keep their head down, and they hope that someone will notice them and offer them an increase. I've not seen that happen ever. I think every time I got an increase was when I was asking for it and, pushing for it and, asking again. Like, I honestly wish that my boss would come to me, yeah, you're doing a great job, Margaret, here's your increase. Maybe it happens sometimes. I've not seen that. A lot of the time you actually do need to ask. So again, record your performance, track your achievements. So don't assume your boss remembers all of your achievements. Many times when I do one-to-one interview coaching sessions with clients, and obviously work on the interview stories and what they've achieved and how they made an impact, people just don't remember exactly what they've achieved, which is if they don't keep any track of that. If you can't remember what you've done 6 months ago or 2 years ago, don't assume your boss will know that. So what I would recommend is that you keep a log of all of your successes and wins, so you can then make a case demonstrating your value to the company. So you might even want to open like a Google Doc, and just like every time you get a praise from the customer, or every time you just get good feedback, or just achieve any kind of success, just put that on a document, put a date in, because it's going to be so useful with the performance reviews, and it's going to be so useful when you then ask for an increase. And many times we think we're going to remember that later, but we don't. We all receive loads of emails and we're just not going to remember that later. So it's a good idea to just track your achievements. Another way to prepare yourself for asking for a salary is you want to capitalize on a recent significant success. So if you've just completed a project that went well, or then just you can diplomatically brag about your success and your team's success to your boss and other critical decision makers. If you don't promote yourself, no one else will, and that's the unfortunate truth of working for many corporations. So it's not so much about bragging, but you do want to self-promote yourself. If you have done some great work, don't just say, oh, it was nothing. No, be own it and thank everyone and say, yeah, it was a hard project, but whatever, the team worked really hard, and I'm glad with what we've achieved. So yes, another one, do your homework. As I mentioned, like use websites like PayScale. I think it's salary.com as well, and Glassdoor, and maybe some industry specific websites, just to find out, are you above, below, or market rate with your skills and experience. And I've actually seen situations when a person, they actually genuinely were under the market rates for the position. I think I've seen that at Expedia. So there was someone who they've actually done the research, and clearly they were below market rates for what other companies were paying. They presented that to the manager, and they did get an increase. I mean, it wasn't immediate, but it was like a strong case. They had research of what and I think they actually had 2 other offers as well, and the guy wanted to stay within the company. So yeah, always a good idea to do your homework. Again, invest in yourself and your professional development. That's important as well. Like, when was the last time you attended an industry event, or have done some course? So investing in yourself is important. Again, like you want to demonstrate a return on investment in money that the firm gives you in the form of salary raise. And also timing can be everything. So ask at the right time. So typically the decisions for issuing raises are completed months before, like the review time or fiscal year beginning. So I would ask for the raise a quarter or even 2 quarters before the raises are normally given, to put yourself on the radar. I remember once, actually in my first job, I knew I wanted a salary increase, and I was doing really well. So I kind of felt I was a little bit below maybe market rates. I've asked my boss like a few months before, and I said, I really want to get X, Y, Z. I think it was like only 3,000 because I was very junior at that stage. But I've asked, what do I need to do? Like, what do you think I need to improve to get that raise? And he gave me some feedback, which was very useful. And a few months later, I got that raise. So timing is very important. You don't want to ask when a poor financial information has just been issued, or when raises have been announced, because by then it's too late. So ask for that discussion a few months before, and don't just leave it to an on-the-fly discussion. You want to prepare for that. And finally, if you don't get a raise, ask your boss what you can do to get one next year. Like really ask for feedback, specific feedback. What kind of projects you can handle, what's your performance, and don't be defensive when you receive that information, because it's meant to help you improve so that you land a higher salary bracket next year. So this would be the main points. And if you would like to connect with me, then feel free to connect, especially LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I think I have like 65 articles on LinkedIn and counting, related to job search and salary negotiation. And loads of videos on YouTube as well related to salary negotiation and interviewing and LinkedIn, etc. So that's all in terms of the content. Do you have any questions?
Hey, thank you very much. That was amazing. The one question I have actually,
could you speak up? Sorry, could you speak up a little bit? I can't hear you that well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The one question I have is, how do you transition salaries between countries and continents? Certainly salary bands are very different in the UK versus in Switzerland, for example.
Yeah, no, completely, especially UK and Switzerland. Yeah, I've done loads of international transfers. Honestly, I don't even think you can compare UK and Switzerland, because the salaries in Switzerland are insane compared to the UK, but I think the cost of living is much higher. So I've done some recruitment into Switzerland. I don't remember what the salary ranges were, but they were much higher, not like 20%, much higher. So sometimes we would look at, oh my God, this guy is just like 5 years of experience. They're earning what, a director level would earn here, or senior manager. So yeah, they are completely different. Especially actually the good example you've given, Switzerland is probably a prime example, because I think salaries in Switzerland, from what I've seen, are the highest in Europe. I think in Scandinavia they're different, but they pay like up to 50% tax at some level. So yeah, no, absolutely, they vary. So that's why, typically with those kind of transfers, companies will have a mobility team, and they will be able to compare the cost of living, and they have salary ranges, cost of living for all of these different cities, and they will be able to come up with an offer. But yeah, they absolutely vary from country to country.
And if you come from a high salary country to a lower salary country, would you then accept a reduced salary? Or
well, I mean, are you talking about specifically moving from Switzerland to the UK?
For example, yeah.
Well, I mean, you would,
back to the UK,
you would have to accept a lower salary. Yeah, I think you will probably have to accept a lower.
That's what's happened to you coming from Oman. That's what's happened.
Yeah. No, I mean, regarding Switzerland, I've had people who moved from Switzerland to the UK. They had to take a bit of a lower salary, but again, they were paying half of what they were paying for accommodation. So yeah, it wasn't the same salary. You couldn't offer the same salary in the UK as in Switzerland, because they're completely different cost of living. So, and again, I'm sure there are exceptions, but just from what I've seen, yeah, there was a pay cut going from Switzerland to London. I'm sure it depends on the level, right? That was the kind of mid-level. I'm not sure what it would be like at an executive level. It could be different. But I wasn't involved in that in Switzerland. The roles I was recruiting for in Switzerland were kind of, mid-experience level.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Anything else?
So where can you best find the information to do salary compensation?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Well, if you want to translate a salary, where could we find the information best?
Well, on salary, I mean, you know, the online course I've mentioned, that's probably where I have a lot of detail on that. But I have, like, you know, short videos on my blog on interview-coach.co.uk. On the blog, there are salary information. You can search in the search blog. On my YouTube, there are videos on salary negotiation. I mean, they're nowhere near as detailed as what I have in my online course, but they're like this loads. Yeah, I have salary negotiation on my LinkedIn. If there's anything specific, you know, email me. I can send you a few links.
Perfect, thank you.
My email is just margaret@interview-coach.co.uk. So any questions you have, just, you know, feel free to send me an email.
Thank you.
Anything else? I think that's potentially, if that's all, then I guess I will stop sharing.
Yeah, today's slides, will they also be shared, or is it only the video?
I mean, to be honest, these slides, I don't mind if you want to share them, because there's not much. Yeah, you can. You can share the slides. I can send them to you guys.
Okay, thank
you. I'll share these slides. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, I have a quick question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just would like to know, just out of curiosity, are organizations quite transparent about salaries they gave to their employees, or not?
You mean transparent with whom?
I don't know, with anyone. Like.
Of course they're not.
They're not. Okay.
No, typically not. I mean, most organizations, and, you know, actually one thing that people sometimes ask me, why can't companies just tell them what salary we are paying, you know? And it's not so easy, because on one hand, yes, it would be nice to see, okay, that's the salary range, and some companies do that. But the problem is that I mentioned that a lot of these salary ranges, they could be like a 20,000 difference. So let's suppose I'm hiring for some kind of manager level, and that salary could be between, say, 55 to 80, depending on the level of experience. And maybe the hiring manager is open to hiring someone more junior. Maybe they're open to hiring someone very senior, right? Or, you know, more senior. So if I put on the job description that we can pay between 55 to 80, I can assure you that even someone who's very junior, they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm looking for 80, you know, and they're not gonna get that. Whereas sometimes you can pay more than so again, I've had situations when, actually in one of my last contracts, we had these product roles, and we were looking to pay, I don't remember what the salary range was, but we were looking to pay 80 to 85. They were like senior product managers, you know, in technology experience. Sorry, I think we're looking to pay between 80 and maximum 90. Yeah. And we didn't advertise the salary range. That was quite a niche role. So we were using agencies as well, on top of, you know, dealing with candidates directly. And actually the person we hired later was amazing, but we had to pay a lot more because he was very senior, and, you know, he had like another offer from Amazon, which was really high, and we actually had to pay this guy 100,000. But if I put the range at 80 to 90, this guy would have never applied. Yes, so I think it goes both ways. Sometimes you can pay more than what the range, and I think that's why companies don't advertise the range. They're just gonna ask you what salary you're looking for. That's
what about I'm sorry, what about their current employees? So you have a range of how much they pay.
You know what? I can't speak for all the companies. I think, like my last company I was recruiting for, the ranges weren't open to everyone, no, but and I don't think they should be, actually, because it's like you're gonna be comparing. You might be asking, oh, why is my colleague earning 5,000 more? Well, maybe your colleague was earning 10,000 more before. So it's like, it's never gonna be completely fair. You know, you will never have everyone earning. Like, you want to have people earning at the same level, earning, you know, it's going to be a range, but you can't have people having 20,000 differences at the same level. It just doesn't make any sense, you know, for the team equity. So companies typically aren't transparent with their ranges, but you typically know what level you are at. And like the last company I was recruiting for, they were very open about the kind of making sure that males and females with the same level of experience are paid the same. That was the commitment, you know, that, you know, at some companies, women are maybe paid less. Like there were a lot of articles on that. So they were very, you know, transparent about the fact that you're going to be getting the same kind of salary, you know, if you have the same level of experience. But no, the salary ranges will typically not be shared with, they're not even always shared with the hiring managers, you know, just the range for a specific level. In some companies, they're actually being so strict that, like, in some companies, I would have access to all of the salary ranges as a recruiter. In some of them, no, I would need to request from HR, please give me the salary range for this level. You know, it's like some of them, yeah. So not too transparent. No.
So how they guarantee the gender equality in salary?
No, I mean, you would kind of do it as an HR and recruiter, you know, you would
All
do
right.
it, but you wouldn't know about it as a candidate. That would be like more internal commitment, you know, making
All right,
sure
thank you.
people at the same level will be earning something similar. It's never going to be exactly the same, right? And it shouldn't be, because, you know, even if you have the same, maybe you and another candidate have both have 10 or 15 years of experience, but, you know, maybe you have different salaries or slightly different skill sets. So it's very hard to compare just with years of experience. So that's why the salary is never going to be exactly the same. But at the same time, it shouldn't be a massive difference if you are doing the same job. It's just not fair otherwise. And if it is a big difference, maybe one of you should be at a higher level, you know, so.
All right, thank you.
Right. So thank you so much for watching. I'm going to stop sharing now. And I will send you the slides, Gaia. I'm happy to send these.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Margaret. Does anyone have any questions for Margaret before we actually end the workshop? No? Well, I think people are
nice feedback here. I just noticed that on the right hand side. So yeah, I'm really glad you found it useful. You will get the slides from this one.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I will send them to you now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and have a great evening, everyone. And thank you, Margaret, for sharing all your expertise. And see you soon. Thanks. Bye.
Right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.